We're back. We're live. We're here at 3 p.m. with a very special show with a very special person. Bernard Offen is our guest. He is a survivor from the war, from Auschwitz, from 5 camps altogether. He's been here before a couple of times. We celebrate him. We want to know everything about him. And we really appreciate him coming to talk to us and answering our questions so we can learn more than we ever knew about what happened. Welcome.
Thank you.
Bernard is here on a vacation, I guess you would say, but more than that, he comes from time to time to Hawaii. He lives in Krakow, Poland. He gives people tours of Auschwitz there in Poland, and he relives and recounts the stories of what happened there on a regular basis, which makes him a very unusual fellow. But he's here now, and we want to talk to him and memorialize what he has to say. Bernard is 85 years old, and he looks like he's, a day over 16, Bernard.
Next month, 86.
Okay. So you're not an ordinary man. And we talked last time about why you sign your email, Love, Light, and Courage. And with your permission, I would like to adopt that for my email.
You're welcome to it, of course.
But why? What is love, life, and courage? Why do you do that?
I think the only way that we can transform the world, change society instead of the asshole society that we live in.
Yes, you heard right.
Is through love, caring about other people, not instead as we really as human beings don't count. So it's got to be love, and we really don't know what that is yet, but be fine discovery. And courage is to step forward and be questioning authority, questioning how we make a living, and who we enrich through our labor, and what do they do with the money.
What I get out of it is that, if you've been close to death, if you've been threatened, if people around you have been killed, you have a different view of the world. You're no longer do you have the ordinary fears that people have living in an ordinary society. You've been through the worst of it, and you've seen death close, and so fear doesn't mean anything to you. And so your view of the world is really important, because it is a view of the world based on that experience, based on the fact that you survived. It's a strength, I think.
It's a strength in some way, and it's not true that I have no fear. It's not. However, I am willing to take risks in looking at the world that I live in and question what is going on, and how we as human beings behave towards one another, what are the laws, and how do they are stacked in order to make people sick by the food that is produced under the law, and they're right, they can do that. But it's a robbery of people's health and well-being, and out of that, they make money. So it's
talking about the multinational food companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, maybe it's a clarity. It's a clarity that because you're a survivor, you're not sucked into some kind of public relations campaign. That you haven't, you didn't need to buy into all the advertising, that we've all been exposed to all our lives, and you can reject that, and you can see things more clearly. Am I getting to the point here?
I think you are. I, as a human being, don't really need that much to live and live well. I might not have the things that in commercials, they make people jealous that they don't have this or that. because next door neighbor has it and we should have it. And so I'm not trapped into that. So I look at life much more clearly, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being that I live in this society, I'm still sometimes trapped into it, sucked into it. And I'm trying to stay conscious about not getting into that.
Yeah. So before we came to the studio, I asked you if you thought that you was perfectible. Because somebody who's been through the kind of experience you've had, see all the death and dying around you for the formative years of your teenage life, it's a reasonable question to ask. Is mankind, humankind, perfectible or imperfectible? Do you believe in humanity, or do you feel that humanity will always go bad?
I believe in humanity. I think we're perfectible. But the question is also, what is perfection? We need to decide what is perfection before we try to get there. But certainly to be more humane to one another is the beginning step. And in many ways, the laws that are being passed for some system which is exploitive of others is not humane.
But, back in, the other thing we talked about before we came down to the studio was the incredible, murderous anti-Semitism that was going on in Germany. You pointed out to me that as opposed to other kinds of anti-Semitism in the world we've seen, the Germans went out looking for Jews to kill. In every country they could do that. In every country in Europe where they had any influence, they would try to, what was the term, suck them up and put them in camps like the ones you were in. And even, in fact, they went to Shanghai. We talked about this,
Yes.
Where there was a colony of Jews who had escaped after Kristallnacht. They sent ships to Shanghai to bring them back, across the world, to bring them back so they could kill them in Germany. Now that really goes a distance. That's hatred, anti-Semitic hatred beyond description. How do you reconcile with them? What is that? What is going on in the mind of the German anti-Semite in the 30s and the 40s? What is that process?
It's hatred of others. It's if I were a German in those days, I would want to also hate somebody, because that is what it was being taught in the churches, and that's hatred of others. And it was particular anti-Semitism, anti-Jew hatred, but it is anti-human, and it comes from the religion, and it comes from the economic system that is put in place, that we're in fear of survival if we don't join with the majority who are doing these things. So survival system drives everything else. And religion is the beginning of that, and the politics, of course. So it's an insane system, actually.
Now, many people, have criticized religion as being responsible for some of the world's worst wars and worst controversies, some of the world's most brutal historical events. But you're Jewish. Do you have religion?
Many times I do not believe in religion. I'm a humanist, but I was born Jewish, and that sticks with me. And because I was born Jewish, I was entitled to be put into a concentration camp and murdered, as were almost 60 people in my family. And they were all a threat to the super race, the German super race.
So you were in the camps, 5 of them, between the age of 12 and 16, was it?
Yes.
And you had some really terrible experiences there, but you couldn't go to Hebrew school. Your family had been murdered or was in camps to be murdered. Um, you, you couldn't sit around the dining table and learn from them. You could not go to a Passover Seder. You could not be bar mitzvah. Am I right?
No.
So all of that training you might have had in an ordinary Jewish community and family was impossible.
Right.
Would it have been different, do you think, had you not been in the camps? Would it have been different if you had been sitting around the table with your family and studying the Passover Seder and studying Hebrew and learning about the Jewish rituals?
I am sure it would have been different. How different, I don't know. But I would have very likely grown up to be a religious Jew, not religious, Orthodox Jew maybe. And it's my speculation. I don't know. The world changed drastically for me because I am a Jew.
Yeah, well, yes, of course. But going back to the same point, you were removed from ordinary society and put in the Holocaust in that period of time. And I'm interested in knowing how you think it may have changed you, how it has affected you, how it has built you the way you are today. Do you feel, what do you feel it gave you or took from you as in terms of your development as a person?
I think, denied my family, love of my family, love of country, love of the nation, because I was being discriminated as a young boy. I was being called a Christ killer, as if I, Bernard, so many generations removed from that event, was still called as if I murdered Christ. And of course, that's not true. Jews didn't murder Christ. It was the Romans. But that is not known so well in the Christian world. We as Jews are still being blamed.
So this has an effect on you.
This has an effect on.
What effect would you say? I mean, you're different, and in many ways, admirably different, because you dedicated your life to recounting the story, evaluating what happened to you and its effect on Europe and the world and all. But what kind of effect did it have on you to be in this environment where you were called a Christ killer, in an environment where people around you were being slaughtered every day, where, but for the grace of God and an old-fashioned dumb luck, you might have been killed in exactly the same way? I mean, what effect does that have on you as a person? How did that make you what you are?
Well, first of all, I came to the conclusion that we are a very stupid people, globally, and more so in some countries. And so what we believe is what we create. It's a simple decision. And having seen all the suffering and murders, this is not what I wish for anyone. And so I am sensitized to people's suffering and how it's being created and recreated through our economic system.
And there's a huge irony here that back in those days, at the end of the war, where the Jewish partisans, if you will, the people who created the state of Israel, were saying, never again, we will never permit this again. And now here we are, gee whiz, 70 years later this year. And you've seen all of this, you've seen it come and go. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset. And here we are, back with murderous anti-Semitism all over the Middle East and elsewhere. I mean, how do you reconcile that? Didn't we all think that it would not happen again? And yet, here it is.
We thought, at least I thought, that it would never, that the world would never allow for anything like that to happen again. And it is not happening in that fashion again. We don't need the trains to send people to concentration camps. We don't need gas chambers. We have advanced. We have nuclear doomsday devices. We just fly them over there, whoever they are. And the nuclear doomsday devices are an equal opportunity destroyer. They're not about defense. It's insanity to think that we're defending ourselves by having these nuclear doomsday devices.
Let's take a short break. That's Bernard Offen. He is a survivor, a remarkable man, survived 5 camps during the war between the age of 12 and 16 in Poland. He now lives in Krakow, comes to Hawaii once in a while, and in Krakow he gives tours to people to show them the camps and show them where he was during that time. Here on Community Matters, I'm Jay Fidel. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Seymour Kazimirski. I have a show called Seymour's World on Think Tech Hawaii. Our show is about opening minds and facilitating conversations. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. I have no idea who our guests are going to be, but I guarantee you we're going to have lots and lots of fun. Aloha from Seymour's World.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance. Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here talking with Bernard Offen, who is a survivor from World War II. Now, 70 years later, and all this time, he's been recounting his story, I guess, to say. So before we move into modern times, just to go back to those camps for a minute, what was it like? I think, people really have trouble putting themselves in your skin in those days. What was it like in terms of eating and sleeping and, being incarcerated and made to work and so forth? What was your day like, if you can recall?
Well, if you can imagine a barracks that was used for horses by the German army, about 700-800 people. That was for about 36 horses. And 3 bunks high. And I, being the youngest in the barrack,
you were the youngest one in your barracks?
Yes. And I was told by my angels,
Those are the people who befriended you.
Befriended me and helped me. And they said, Bernard, you're going to sleep on the 3rd bunk up there. And why was that a good place? Because we all had diarrhea and everything came down. You understand? And the worst place was on the bottom bunk. That was one thing. You're shut in the barracks overnight, and there's some buckets put by the door, and if you need to go, you go in the bucket. But the bucket started to overflow very quickly, and if you can imagine what was the smell like, then you have a great imagination. If you see hungry people, starved people, I mean walking skeletons, that's what most of us were, walking skeletons.
Could you talk to each other? Or were people depressed and silent?
It was both. People were depressed, there was talk. There was always talk about the war is going to end pretty soon and this is going to be over. There was that hope. But the reality was that where am I going to get the next piece of bread, or when is the next soup coming? It was about food. You know, and very little of it was given to us, so we were walking skeletons. And people were dying overnight.
From what?
From starvation. You know, if you ever seen these pictures, they died from lack of food, nutrition. And that was designed in the process of how long anyone would last in the camp.
Were you made to work?
I was not made to work in Auschwitz. I was told to pick up a broom and start sweeping, and that was one of my angels who saved my life by giving me something to do. So I kept doing that. And if you can imagine 4 starving men sharing a loaf of bread. So they're usually a round loaf and had to be cut in 4 quarters and given to us. But there was usually a fight that this piece is bigger than my piece. So someone in the barrack had a scale. The scale was a piece of string, and from the string was a piece of wood, you know, like that. And at the end of the string, piece of wood, there was a short string and a toothpick, a large toothpick that was plunged into the bread. So if you can see someone holding up this and say, well, this side has got more, so you got to cut a piece and put it in it. And there's 4 men watching, waiting for that piece of bread. They would fight if there wasn't someone with a scale. So we each had to give a little piece of bread to the owner of the scale, okay? But so that's
a commission.
Yeah, that's one event. There's many. In the morning, we had to drag out the corpses and lay them out to be counted because there was reveille in the morning, and we had to line up and be counted. And whoever died was dragged out and laid down there to be counted. And the count had to be always right. If not, it started all over again, and we were out there winter or summer for hours, because sometimes it was just a way of torturing people. If you came near the wire, you were shot at from the towers. And some people wanted to end their life because the suffering was so great, and they didn't have any hope, and they ran to the wire and got electrocuted. It was unbelievable conditions to put human beings into, but it was designed to murder.
Did you see the ovens? Did you see the gas chambers?
I did not see them. I knew they were there, and in the distance, because of the crematoria and the gas chambers, they were together. The smoke came out. After I arrived in Auschwitz with my father went one way, I went the other way.
The selection.
Yeah, next day after the tattoo and the...
Can you show your tattoo?
Well,
I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but I think it's worth documenting.
Well, I don't think it's upside down.
Yeah.
But you can...
3, 4, 8, 1, 5?
No, it's 7815.
7815.
And it's a B.
B 7815.
And my life was saved because I was tattooed. People who didn't have a tattoo were destined for the gas chamber much quicker. But at least there was some desire on their part to use me as labor. Okay, but I'll tell you an incident that it's got nothing to do with the camps. It's about starvation. Sometimes I went to a party with people, you know, we having some snacks, you know, a little bit of everything, and because we're supposed to go to dinner later, so just little snacks. And someone said to me, let's go to dinner, I'm starving. And I went ballistic and said, what the hell do you mean we're starving? You mean you're so thin that you're going to drop dead without any food? No, Bernard, take it easy. It's just an expression. But we use words, you know, we use them so carelessly. I am starving. You mean you're hungry? You're very hungry? Oh, I understand. But using words that have a deeper meaning and using them incorrectly creates a whole mindset.
Well, you know, this country anyway, we've seen many generations go by since the war, and nobody has really starved. They've all had, you know, resources made available, food. But I wonder if you could describe, to the extent that you had this experience, the pain of hunger. What is it like?
You are listless. You are just thinking about food all the time. For me, my system was that at the evening when we got that piece of bread, that I saved the piece of bread overnight in my hand. I held it all night. So in the morning, I would have a piece of bread to eat. That preserved my life one night. But that was my system. It was also a system, I think, for other people also. But sometimes people stole the bread from other people because you fell asleep and, you know, you release it or something like that. I held on to mine like hell. I was in hell, but now, talking about hell, now I'm in heaven in Hawaii.
That's why you come.
Yes, that's why I come.
So, you know, the other thing is the mental aspect of this. You're 12 years old or a teenager, and you never expected this kind of experience in your life. It all devolved quickly, and it was a hard experience. And how did you stay balanced psychologically? You talked about the angels, for example. They must have helped you. And I'm interested in knowing what kind of relationship you would have with an angel, why somebody should be your angel, and whether the relationship you have with the angel would save you emotionally.
I'm not so sure about emotionally, but there's that aspect of it either. I'm talking about the men I was with in the camp. There were some who helped me. I call them my angels. Certainly they had no wings. But I remember their faces, but I don't remember their names. So they were doing the Good Samaritan act of helping someone. And I think that they thought, if I help this young person, maybe someone will help my son, my daughter, someplace. But it's the human thing that people reach out no matter what the circumstances
But not
are.
everybody.
Not everybody.
Only the angels. And something you did or said or something you were made them reach out to you.
Yes.
And I think that's probably something that exists in humanity anyway,
Yes.
prison camp or otherwise, that where you connect with people,
Yes.
And they help you out
Yeah.
because of the connection. You know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, let's take another break, and then I'd like to move for the last part of our show into more modern times and how it was for you leaving leaving Europe after the war. That's Bernard Offen. He's a survivor of 5 camps during the war, from the age of 12 to the age of 16, when I suppose you were emancipated, what, by the 442nd or the 100th Battalion?
No, but they were not far away. I was by the 7th Army.
7th Army.
7th
in
U.S.
1945.
Army. 1945.
Here on Community Matters, I'm Jay Fidel. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to Think Tech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Bernard Offen, a survivor of 5 death camps in Europe in the 40s. So ultimately, you get to this country. And what a blessing, where you wouldn't have to be hungry. What a blessing, where nobody would be trying to kill you. But I wonder how it was. I mean, it's not like, for example, an ordinary immigration path. You know, you've seen the worst of it. Am I right? There was nobody here to be your angel. You had to make your way. How was the experience of entering into American society for you after the war?
Actually, I did have angels, and I still do. That is 5th cousins that we located in America, in Detroit. And they thought that they could come and get us, the 3 brothers. And by that time, we were already in London, after the brothers were in the Polish Army. But they could not, and there was a long quota to almost 5 years. We had to wait the Polish quota to immigrate.
Oh, and the quota system,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. And with almost a year later, after immigrating, settling in Detroit, I was drafted.
Welcome to America.
Welcome to America.
Here's your draft notice.
And yes, and I was sent to Korea. So I was in Korea for 17 months, defending our liberties
Were you in the
and
front lines?
democracy. No, I was not in the front lines. I was lucky. I was in rear echelon, and but I started to realize soon after what that was about, and I did not like that experience. But for a long, long time, I actually wanted to be just like my liberators, you know, just walking around with a gun and you know, being someone who has power. But
Okay, well, so you finish your stint, 17 months in the Army in Korea. You come back to this country. What was that like, making your way? I mean, if you talk to a dozen survivors, you'll have a dozen different stories,
Yes.
all very different. You know, some
Yeah.
of them made tons of money, some of them didn't. Where are you on that continuum? Did you have a nice life as a survivor in this country?
Well, I got a job driving a delivery truck in Detroit, and that provided me with a living. And later on, I got another different job working for Sears Roebuck as a technician repairing appliances. In the meantime, I met my wife and got married, happy American divorce. Terrible, actually. And I have two sons. One of my sons, to this day, is affected by my experience. Not that I told him a lot about my past. I did answer some of the questions he was answering without using horror. Look, only dates, events, and yes, I was there. So he is suffering from that, and that is not uncommon in
Among the children of
survivors, that someone picks up the torch, so to speak, and my son has done that, and that's my sad part about my coming to America. And later on, I started my own appliance business, and then I had a coin laundry business, and it was out of that going now into the 1950s, where I read in the Detroit papers that better build a shelter because we might get bombed, atomic bombs. And
the Cold War?
The Cold War. And when I realized, reading one of the Detroit papers, what happens when an atomic bomb goes off in the very center, and then the next ring, and the next outer ring, I realized that it is useless for me to be trying to make money. We're living in an insane world, and they call it defense.
So was this a factor in your decision to move back, part-time anyway, to Poland?
I've never really moved back to Poland. I'm a U.S. citizen, and but I spend at least half the year there in doing my work of bearing testimony to people who want to walk with me. And I share that information. It's my most important work for me that I selected for myself.
So what was the decision process? At some point in your life in Detroit, you say, I'm going to spend half the year in Poland, and I'm going to tell my story around the Auschwitz camp in Krakow. What was that about? I mean, what made you do that?
My middle brother, Nathan, who's now 92, and he goes skydiving for his birthday. He said to me, you know, the memory of what happened to me is lodged right here, and he's pointing at the back of his neck. And I said to him, you know, for me, it's not just in the back of my neck, it's in my whole body. It's a memory. And I saw that other survivors that I knew, they were getting sick. And I said, if I don't...
What kind of sick? Mentally, physically?
Both. Physically, mentally, and in the kind of life they were living. Some of them made it big in business. I saw that I'm going to get sick if I don't confront my trauma and talk about it, download from the hard disk, and I'm the hard disk, to other people. So I started doing that, and went to Poland, to Krakow and Auschwitz and some of the camps, and confronted my fears in going into that place or talking about that. And it has been my healing process to, you know, download from me. And I'm feeling good, I'm healthy.
Has it worked? You look great. Has it worked for you? I mean,
it's worked very well.
You made this decision in order to save yourself from getting sick over internalizing it.
Yes.
So now you have a chance, you've had a chance for decades to talk to people who didn't know and tell them what had happened, and it helps.
It helped a great deal. It helped a great deal for me. It opened me up. It helped me to to see the world through different eyes and be more sensitive to what's transpiring in the world today. So love, light, and courage is what it takes to really live like a decent human being, because we do need courage to not believe everything, not to try out everything. For instance, we can end many of the sufferings throughout the world if we don't buy some goods that are made by people who were shut in a building, and 1,000 people perished because they were shut in the building like a prison. And so there's slave labor there. So we support that system, but if we don't buy it and question, where did this come from? Who am I enriching by my energy, and I do their work? And that will change the world if we all wake up to the
I asked you earlier, Bernard, how the experience in the 40s changed you. And it sounds like, I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it didn't change you right away, but it set the seeds of a lifelong healing process that took you to where you are now, that made you a person that abhors war in any form, that makes you the humanist. I mean, you may not have been a humanist at the age of 12.
No.
But you certainly are now at the age of 85.
Right.
Yeah. Where's it go? You will continue to teach the story in Krakow. You will continue to come to Hawaii, I hope, and say hi.
I hope so.
You're making a movie. You've made other movies too. You're making a movie about your life with some local filmmakers, which is wonderful for both you and the filmmakers. A book, would you consider a book? Have you written a book?
Yes, I've written a book, and it's called My Hometown Concentration Camp.
Yes, I know that book, yes.
And it's about Krakow and the ghetto that I was in. So the title, My Hometown Concentration Camp, is
right.
a true title. It is not an invention. And I've made 5 films with the help of others, because this was all low budget or no budget productions, to pass on the information that I have, how we as human beings behave to one another, and it needs to change drastically.
And one of those films was Seymour Kaczmarski's film.
Yes.
And I shout out to Seymour. Seymour, thank you for introducing me.
Thank you, Seymour.
To Bernard Offen. But what about the dark side of it? I mean, if you walk down the street and see a German face, for example, who reminds you of a German face in the 40s, how do you react to that?
Well, interesting question. I remember being in Germany working on one of my small films, and then walking in the street afterwards and seeing an old man just walking in the opposite direction. And he is already passed, and I'm past him, and I catch myself thinking, where the hell were you during the war, and what were you doing? He was long gone, but I was still, angry at this man who was probably innocent, So when I caught myself, that was delicious, I think, because that was a healing moment. Because, we think unconsciously, and we continue with the thought long after the event, and we keep it in place, and we keep it in place, and we keep it in place, instead of going past it and healing ourselves, moving on.
It's about introspection. It's about self-consciousness.
Yes,
self-examination.
Yes.
One last question, Bernard, because we're out of time.
Are you sure you're on the last question?
It's not my last question, but for this show, it'll be my last question. You know, we all saw Schindler's List, and we saw the connection
Yeah.
between the Holocaust and Israel.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, I grew up in New York, and in the 50s when I went to, you know, Hebrew language school and all that, there was talk of little else but Israel. Israel was the natural progression
Yeah.
from the Holocaust,
Yeah.
from, you know, from the Warsaw Ghetto, which was
Yeah.
horrendous, and all those camps.
Yeah.
A lot of Jews went to Israel, and they are still in Israel. And the spirit of Judaism out of Europe lives in many ways in Israel. You didn't go there. Why not?
Actually, I went to Israel several times, but I did not remain there. I couldn't find a place for myself there. I saw it as a conflicted place, and I wanted to continue witnessing to people, and that was not the place to do it in any ways. So,
All right. Bernard Offen, a very special human being. It's a privilege to know you, Bernard. Bernard, a
Thank you.
survivor from 5 camps, an extraordinary man who has done extraordinary things, and it's well worth knowing him. Here on Community Matters, I'm Jay Fidel, and I really enjoy knowing him. Thank you, Bernard.
thank you.